If you're potentially triggered by topics such as food, body image, and EDs, then please skip 1950 to 28. Otherwise, enjoy the episode.
Get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica.
And this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennial women watch for the first time, sometimes, but mostly rewatch iconic tween entertainment from the early 2000s.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by or affiliated with in any way any of the shows or companies we mention in this podcast. We just really enjoy talking and watching TV. And right now, the TV we're talking about is Lizzie McGuire
season
2.
And because Lizzie is so freaking iconic, and like we knew it was going in, but we didn't think it would be so much so. We can't let go of any episodes in season 2, so we're talking about all of them. So if you haven't listened already, we have an episode on the first 13 episodes of season 2, and this one will be covering episodes 14 to 26. And then next episode we'll discuss the end of the series and all the other good bits. So
and this is a good season. If you listen to last episode where we discussed the first part, there's some really, really iconic episodes, and I feel like it just continues going that way the more you watch season 2.
Like, I watched all of them, and I didn't know what we could skip out on, because like everything is either the plot or it's just absolutely bananas, but it's so fun that you're like, I have to talk about this. So should we just jump in?
Let's jump 14? In. Episode 14, Just Like Lizzie.
So, fun place to start, because we start in 8th grade in episode 14.
Yes.
But, like, spoilers, we're going to start 8th grade like 4 different times throughout season 2.
There's no continuity in this season in terms of what grade they are in. It doesn't make sense.
No, it does not at all. But we're starting 8th grade, and Lizzie is like super excited to be an 8th grader because she's learned so much as a 7th grader. So she takes this 7th grader named Andy under her wing, and Andy's like, oh my God, Lizzie, you're more than just a friend. You're a role model. And then she starts literally modeling her entire life after Lizzie. She dyes her hair the same color, she cuts it and styles it the same color. She starts wearing the same outfits as Lizzie the day that she wears them.
Yes.
Which is like really the part that creeps me the fuck out.
Yeah, because that's like not just you're my role model, that's I'm stalking you. Like, how are you finding out what outfit she's wearing before she wears them?
Yeah, there's multiple times where Miranda will make a comment like, look at her, she's got such style. And Lizzie walks up and she's like, you mean my style?
Yeah.
And she also like wants to be friends with Miranda and Gordo. Gordo's like being creepy and like is into Andy because she's just Lizzie 2.0.
Yeah.
And this is like really starting to grate on Lizzie. So finally one time she tries to let her down gently. And then she sees her in her house getting her favorite chicken recipe from her mom, and she fucking snaps. And she's like, this is not okay. You need to go get your own life. And then she has no repercussions for that, because the next day we see that Andy's become a mentee of Kate's and is looking exactly like her and now hates Lizzie.
Yep, she just moves right on to the next role model.
And it's never like, don't snap at people, Lizzie. It's like, it's just, oh, look at the monstrous mini-me.
There's a little bit of that, because after Lizzie does that, Joe kind of gives her a little bit of scolding, like, Lizzie, that maybe was a little too much. But there's not really any repercussions for Lizzie. Like, she freaks out. But
yeah,
it's warranted, I feel.
It's creepy. And I also have to point out the part about the clothing really confuses me because I bought a few items of fast fashion back in May. I don't do it very often. I did this time from Macy's and H&M, and then my clothing, plot twist, got stolen a few weeks ago. So I went to the mall like 2 days ago to replace some of the items, and already not a single one of them exists anymore in the stores.
Yep.
Bought this shirt as a comp out for the other crop top that got stolen, but it's not the same style H&M. I'm very aware of that. So I don't know how she's getting all identical clothing to Lizzie, is my point. Like is Lizzie like that brand new on the fashion, or like what's like what's going on?
Yeah, which I would argue to say she's not, because I think in season 1 we get that episode where Joe's bargain shopping and Lizzie ends up essentially saying she wants to join her. So clearly there are people who bargain shop and probably go to like shops that sell like last season stuff. So if most of Lizzie's stuff is last season stuff, then how is Andy getting it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. The part that creeped me out the most about Andy's just the like small little weird thing she does. Like she knew Lizzie's like locker combination and would like organize her locker so then the book, whatever book she needed for her next class, was like on top, which I'm like, that's just creepy. It's weird.
She also organizes she gets her schedule re-planned or something so it matches Lizzie's. But I don't really understand that because
they're in different grades.
Well, and all like, so I don't think they're in the same classes, but they have the same breaks or something. But like, didn't you already? Like, it's middle school. My middle school had rotating lunches, but like, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about this.
Yeah, I guess I took it as like she rearranged her schedule so then her classrooms are closer to Lizzie's, so then they can like overlap in the like period between classes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't actually know.
The plot, the side plot,
yes,
is that Matt is upset because he is a wilderness cadet and he's going to be demoted to bunny cadets if he doesn't earn his own patch. And so he's like going through all the different ways that he could earn a patch, and there's like identifying nature, and Sam like helps him gather all these leaves, and then he's like literally scratching himself with a leaf, which I don't understand because that's never a thing that I would do in my life.
Yeah.
Because he like starts to feel itchy, so then he's scratching himself with the leaf, which is then spreading it because plot twist, it's poison oak.
No, it's poison ivy. It is poison ivy, which doesn't make sense because if this is supposed to be based somewhere in LA, we have poison oak. We don't have poison ivy, but they do specifically say it's poison ivy.
Well, then there you go. They probably didn't care enough to look into it. And then I don't even know what else he tries to get, but similarly, like Sam keeps hurting himself.
Yep.
And eventually Matt just knows how to fix him and earns his first aid patch and gets to stay a wilderness cadet. But I really need to hone in on the first part about the poison ivy, because not only does that part not make sense that it's poison ivy, but also there's a line where Matt identifies it and his dad's like, good job. And he's like, unfortunately, poisonous leaves don't count.
Yes, which wouldn't you think those are the most important ones to know how to identify the poisonous ones?
That's what I'm saying. I did Girl Scouts and we specifically had to learn the poisonous ones.
Like, I didn't even do Girl Scouts or well, obviously I didn't do Boy Scouts, but I didn't do any of that stuff. I just went to camp and they still taught you how to identify poisonous leaves at camp.
Yeah, that was the patch.
Yeah. The part about this plotline that bothered me is like the way that Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, which essentially is what Wilderness Cadets is, works is you age up into the next group. So one group is ages like 5 to 7, then the next group's like 8 to 10. You age up. You don't get demoted. Like, it's based on age.
You are supposed to earn a certain number of badges, but you don't get like promoted based on those badges, and you can't get demoted, and you can still be a thing even if you didn't get a number of
exactly.
But you're supposed to. I know, like, at the very, very end of Girl Scouts, there's, like, a huge project you're supposed to do in order to become certain things. That's when, like, the age stops mattering. But you're right. When you're, like, 10, it's all about age. And also, you can't demote kids. That's fucking terrible.
Yeah. Also, a patch of his own. So I'm like, he does have other patches. So what does a patch of his own mean? Like, the other ones don't count because he got help with those? Like, he's a child. Of course he needs help.
Well, usually you'll earn most of your patches with your troop, and then you have the ability to earn some on your own. But
got it.
That's how I understood it, but also, like, you never see his troop.
No, you don't. They probably didn't have budget to hire that many actors. Come on.
I don't know. They've got budget in this season.
Sure.
When we get into some of these other episodes, which literally the next one.
Yeah. Lizzie in the middle. Oh, yeah, this is big budget, guys. Big budget. Mr. Dig, our favorite sub, is back, and he's subbing theater class, but also might be English class. Not really sure. They're reading Romeo and Juliet, and Mr. Dig kind of brags that he taught Frankie Muniz everything he knows, and then Frankie shows up. And he does a little bit of acting with the class. Him and Lizzie do Romeo and Juliet for a little bit, and then we see Frankie join Lizzie at the lunch table, and Frankie ends up asking Lizzie out, and she says no. She's against it. She feels like they're from different worlds. They shouldn't be dating. They're not going to relate. And then Frankie just shows up at her house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, he does. That's the next step.
And then she ends up letting him in. And they end up having like actually a kind of cute little family game night montage where they're playing Scrabble and Pictionary. And then it ends with Frankie kissing Lizzie goodnight on the cheek. And then you see them go on multiple other dates throughout the episode. And it kind of turns out that Lizzie is miserable. Gordo and Miranda start becoming miserable around Lizzie and like confront Lizzie about this. And they're like, as long as you're with Frankie, we don't want to hang out with you. Like, it's becoming too much. There's too much paparazzi and too much attention on you. And we didn't sign up for this. So then she ends up talking to Frankie and they break things off. And then somehow she ends up in his new movie.
I think he's like, you are getting the attention anyway, might as well make it count.
Yeah.
I have feelings, thoughts, emotions, many and none. Like, first of all, I didn't even remember this episode existed. Like, I knew Aaron Carter had an episode, and that was the one I was in for in season 1. And then this one came up out of nowhere.
I literally watched it and I was like, whoa, Frankie Muniz was in an episode? Like, I was shocked.
I did the same thing, and then I mentioned it to you. I like tried to hint at it when we recorded season 1, but I like didn't want to spoil it for you because I had the same freaking shock of like,
yeah,
this is so left field. But obviously it's to promote Agent Cody Banks, which was a movie that Frankie and Hillary did in like 2003 or 2000 or something. Well, they did a sequel as well, but I don't know if she was in the sequel. Anyway, to promote that, he was on Malcolm in the Middle was on Fox, and Fox I think also did Agent Cody Banks. So it's kind of interesting that he's on her Disney show.
Yeah.
But like, there's no other logical explanation for him being there.
Yeah.
I got pissed off at Miranda and Gordo because in the beginning, Gordo was like, you're being sensible by saying no. Miranda was like, since when did we decide not to date celebrities?
That is my favorite line of the whole episode is where Miranda's like, whoa, when did we come up with the no dating famous people rule? It's not his fault he's famous. That's what she says.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
But so that's her attitude then. And then literally halfway through, it's completely flipped, and they're like blaming her for dating him, and it's honestly like kind of uncalled for.
Oh, I completely agree. Because as friends, like, I feel like you have to support your friends, and they basically are like just straight up with her, like, we don't want to be your friend if you're going to continue dating Frankie. It's like, what?
I really feel like they like throw some funky plots at us, and then sometimes to deal with it or to cause conflict, they just make Miranda and Gordo say whatever is contrary to Lizzie, even if it doesn't match with their characters.
Yes. Because I feel like Miranda's Gordo, I kind of understand that he would have a hard time with this. Miranda, her character would be eating up the paparazzi. She would be loving it. So it doesn't fit in with her character that she would be so against it.
Her whole thing was that it was an unflattering photo that ended up in the newspaper, and they were named as two unidentified friends.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't want to be around you, especially as the unidentified friends. Like, I feel like a more sensible solution was Lizzie just telling the paparazzi their name.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Which, speaking of the paparazzi, this connects us to Matt's plot line. Basically, Matt is just ultimate Matt in this episode. He decides that he's going to be Lizzie's entourage, but really he ends up just falling for the paparazzi and ends up like selling them photos and like actually taking them on a tour and selling Lizzie's belongings to them. Until Sam and Joe catch him and they're like, you can't be selling Lizzie shit. Like, cut that out.
Yeah. He decides to be her entourage before she even says yes to Frankie. As soon as he finds out she's been rejected, he's like, can I be your head of security?
Yeah.
And he's like embarrassed when they end up in the newspaper. He's like, do you know how bad this looks on me? But I just want to know if like Matt ever goes to school, because this is at least one of 2 times where we see him turn the house into a tourism experience.
Yep.
During the day.
Yeah. And we'll get to it, but there's a whole episode where he just like ditches school with Lanny and they're just around downtown LA. So it is very, I don't think he goes to school.
Except the episodes where we specifically see him in school. Those are the only ones.
He's part-time. He works from home the other part of it. He does school from home.
Do you have any other thoughts on Frankie Muniz?
My biggest thought is like, you're trying to tell me Frankie Muniz was bigger than Hilary Duff?
Were they?
I felt like, because they were like, oh, Frankie, big deal. And my thing, I'm like, I feel like him and Hilary Duff were always kind of on the same level. But maybe that was the point.
I think Malcolm in the Middle was one of the first like sitcoms starring a kid that age. I mean, not the first, because it was very like Leave It to Beaver-esque, right? And it ran longer. It ran from like 98 to 2006.
Okay.
So I think he was a bigger household name, like maybe the adults could digest.
Got it.
But also it's really more about Agent Cody Banks than anything else.
Yeah, I wasn't connecting that until you mentioned it, and that makes sense.
Oh, as soon as I saw him in there, I was like, this is 100% to promote that.
Yeah.
And that moment where he comes in, so she's trying to run the lines with Ethan, and Ethan's not responding because he can see Frankie Muniz past her, and she turns around and she sees him, and they have him on like a pulley so that he's just like gliding towards her as he goes, but soft, through yonder window break, blah, blah, blah. Like, says the line as he's like literally gliding to her. It's so fucking funny, the drama they throw into it.
Yeah. It's good.
But it's kind of funny neither of us remembered it. And similarly, the next episode is one of the most memorable that I hear like name dropped the most. But I personally did not remember it at all.
Nope, did not remember this episode.
But I hear people mention it all the time when they talk about how Lizzie McGuire was groundbreaking.
Yep. Yeah, and it definitely is. Next episode is episode 16, Inner Beauty.
Okay, so Gordo's filming a music video starring Lizzie Miranda. He brings over the snacks and they're like, "Oh, pause, we gotta eat." And they start shoving their faces and he's like, "Wow, you guys really know how to eat." Like well, actually he says something like, "Wow, you really eat a lot," which don't fucking comment on how people eat. Thank you.
No.
And this comment kind of like irks Miranda a lot more than it does Lizzie, and you see that she's also really stressed because she doesn't know, like, she doesn't feel good about school or confident in that and what she's going to do with her life, and so she decides to go on a diet, supposedly because of what Gordo said, but her diet is just that she is not eating. And she'll make excuses and say she had a big breakfast when they ask why she's not eating lunch, and then she comes to rehearse at Lizzie's house and she says, "Oh, I had a big lunch," to Mrs. McGuire, and Lizzie's like, "The fuck? No, you didn't. I was there.
You didn't eat anything."
And this leads to Miranda almost fainting during their rehearsal in Lizzie's living room, which really concerns Lizzie. And I think there's a couple times when Lizzie tries to bring it up to Miranda and she gets defensive, but eventually I don't even know why she changes her mind, because the first time Lizzie tries, Miranda gets defensive, and then later Lizzie and Gordo both try, and then Miranda shares with them that she's been feeling this pressure. Eating was the only thing she felt like she could control.
Yeah. I think she had to warm up to them talking to her, but also the first couple times that Lizzie tries to speak to her about it, it's always in a public situation. I think it's at school, and then it's at the mall. And finally, the last time that we see Gordo and Lizzie and Miranda kind of have their heart to heart, and really Gordo and Lizzie together are telling Miranda that they're concerned about her and her diet. They do it in privacy, like it's just the three of them and it's in a more comfortable situation. So I think that's why Miranda's like maybe a little more open to it.
Yeah, and I think, as weird as it is, they did sort of emphasize Gordo's comment to her, and maybe him being there helped a lot.
Yeah.
For him to be like, "That's not what I meant."
Yeah.
And then after they have their heart to heart, Miranda's shown to be eating a lot again, and she's suddenly like very confident. She sees herself in her music video and she's like, "Oh, I look great."
Yeah. She's like, "Did you see me?" Like
what were your thoughts on this plotline, Jessica?
I thought, well, because we mentioned we didn't remember this episode, I was like kind of surprised that they really actually dove into something as like deep as like body confidence and body dysmorphia and like dieting and an eating disorder.
Call it what it is. It's an eating disorder, and I will put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode.
Perfect. I was just surprised that they dove into an eating disorder, thinking that this show came out to, if we're looking in the later seasons, this episode probably came out around 2003. I don't think they did it perfectly. There are definitely things I noted where, like, when they were talking about Miranda not eating, Lizzie and Gordo were speaking about Miranda not eating, Lizzie makes the comment, "Well, Miranda is so not dumb. At least I hope not." And it's like, having an eating disorder and struggling with body confidence does not make you dumb. Like, that is just a human experience. So, like, there were things that they did not do correctly in this episode, but the fact that it was an episode at all, I think is, like, really impressive and, like, groundbreaking for a children's TV show to bring up a topic like this at that time.
There were things they did wrong and things they did right. I will say, when you're in that situation, sometimes you kind of think to yourself, like, because it's wrong, you kind of think to yourself, like, I'm not stupid enough to do that.
Yeah.
It's way more fucked up when your friends say it.
Yeah.
I liked that it was a focus on control, because that really is what eating disorders are about. And a lot of similar sort of health issues is that you're just trying to like get a handle on your life and what you feel like you can control.
Yeah.
So I liked that was there. That felt realistic. I have to say, when I was watching this as a kid and watching things like this, as an adult watching it, I'm like, this is groundbreaking. Like, this is important. I'm glad that they had this. As a kid, I watched this and I can tell you, I thought, but Miranda is stick thin and I don't look anything like that. And I learned that some people don't eat because they don't like how they look. And maybe that was an option.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe, see where I don't remember, right? Like, I don't remember watching this episode, and I don't necessarily remember being someone who had those thoughts watching TV, but definitely, like, TV and media has a huge impact on how people view their bodies and view themselves and how people start to develop eating disorders. So I can see how it would have a negative side effect as well.
Yeah. I don't know that it was specifically from this episode. Because I don't remember watching this episode. But I know around the same time that it came out was around the time I started having issues with my body image. And in general, whenever we saw like girls lacking in confidence and then overcoming it, they were still so thin that I was like, well, of course they can like overcome it. But if they can also feel fat, then like, of course I am.
Yep. Yeah, it almost made you justify your feelings to yourself.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the right way to do this is, or to just like promote body positivity in general. And like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but then also there's an issue, right? If you're only promoting body positivity, like, I don't know. Is that toxic as well? Because do we only want to, like, not everyone always views their body positively?
Yeah, the toxicity with that comes into, like, when people want to lose weight and they're told that they're, like, bad role models because they're not being body positive. But, like, if they're taking care of their body, then, like...
That's body positive, yeah.
And that cuts a lot deeper, I think, as an adult than it would as for a kid.
For sure. Yeah, it's like the people watching the show when it came out, well, besides parents, who probably actually enjoyed the episode and thought it was positive, but I think you're right, in which children were probably getting something different out of it.
I think just as a kid, I always knew I was being sold a message or a moral. And so I was like, well, that's coming from adults, but like looking past that, what's this about?
Yeah.
Are we good on that?
Yeah, we're good on that. Briefly,
mm-hmm.
I was going to say briefly, I'll mention Matt's plotline. He's an artist. Him and Lanny go around town collecting trash. They clear out the living room, turn it into like a full-on art exhibit of all his trash. They end up painting Sam's car. And Sam and Joe are kind of trying to balance back and forth between, like, do we support his passion and this newfound interest that he wants to be an artist, but, like, is he taking it too far?
He's an artiste.
An artiste. Yep.
I don't really have anything to say about this one. I just, like, commend Matt for his many talents and aspirations.
Yeah, he has a new talent and aspiration every single episode.
And the way that, like, he does one to fruition, and then he's like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, he's always, like, looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next episode 17, moving on up. It is a brand new school year. We are back in 8th grade, baby! Even though we were just in 8th grade 4 episodes ago, we're back.
And I think I clocked a line that I've already forgotten, but we were in 8th grade when Frankie Muniz was there as well.
Yes.
But we're restarting 8th grade again, guys, because that's how happy we are about the start of the school year.
Yep. Gordo gets called to the principal's office, and he gets the opportunity to skip 8th grade and go straight to high school. He's debating whether he thinks this is the right thing to do. Lizzie and Miranda are really supportive at first and are like, you should definitely do it. Like, this is an amazing opportunity. And then they realize that means Gordo's going to have to leave them. And that's when they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have encouraged him because now it's just going to be the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Gordo decides to go to high school. It sucks. He can't open up his locker. He gets not even bribed. He gets bullied into paying $5 for an elevator pass, even though there's no such thing as an elevator pass. Lizzie ends up meeting him at the bus stop at the end of the day and asking him how it was. And he like puts on a facade and is like, oh my God, it was so great. High school's the best. And then later he ends up talking to both Lizzie and Miranda. And he's like, I'm going back to middle school. High school sucked. Like, I don't want to be there yet. And it's a good one.
It's fine.
Yeah.
No notes.
My only note, which is very unrelated, but let's touch on Matt and Lanny.
Because I have notes about Matt and Lanny. I just don't have notes about Gordo.
Okay, I have no notes about Gordo. I don't have notes about Matt and Lanny. The note I have is about Joe. So I guess Joe is a badass. The episode opens with the sink being broken, and Sam is trying to... Well, I think it actually opens with Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo. But the first part we see of other people is the sink being broken. Sam's trying to fix it. Joe gets in there and she fixes it immediately. And I just love that she's like the person who fixes things in the household and like gets shit done.
Joe does everything and I'm obsessed with her, and that just progresses throughout season 2.
Yes.
So Matt and Lanny in this, like, continuing from what you said, because this episode is really just like, fuck Sam. That's how I felt watching this.
Yeah.
Because Matt and Lanny decide to, being amazing, multi-talented 10-year-olds that they are, go out for cheerleading. And they're practicing all up and down the backyard. And Sam's like really struggling with the idea that his son is going to be a cheerleader. And he's like, don't you want to try like throwing a football or like playing catch or like golfing, or like he like throws all kinds of like manly activities at him.
Yeah.
Well, Joe's just like, why don't you just like support our son in what he wants to do?
Yep.
And then Matt and Lanny go to cheerleading tryouts. I think do Joe and Sam go to support them? Because I know Sam gets a little like supportive.
He does get supportive, but that's after they come back from cheerleading tryouts is when he finally comes around.
So they try out and they fucking kill it, right? Like
they do great.
They've got a great routine. I also just love how many...
so much gymnastics.
I love how many plot lines the writers clearly could not think of. So they were like, let's just recycle what Lizzie's done with Matt. It happens multiple times in season 2. This being one of them.
Yeah.
One of the more obvious ones, because this was like Lizzie's first or second plot line. But anyway, they try out. They fucking kill it. They don't join because there's only one boys uniform and they're a package duo. They're not gonna like choose who can join.
No.
And yeah, Sam like learns how to get past his toxic masculinity and like overuse gender norms and support his son, but also it doesn't matter because Matt didn't join.
Well, I think it does matter, right? Sam came around. He understood he needed to move past his own feelings.
But would it have been harder for him to do so if Matt had actually joined?
Oh, probably, because then he would have had to continue to confront that.
Yeah.
You know?
Whereas he got to feel relief.
Yeah.
I love this plot line. And fuck Sam. That's my whole note on this whole episode.
Yeah. I liked it. I also liked seeing Joe be a wife who's obviously like toying with being a parent, supporting her son, but also like balancing her relationship with her husband and trying the best ways. She's going about the best ways to make sure Sam is supportive, and she's really challenging him to be better.
Yeah, and that is something she does repeatedly, like when she had him like come up with Matt's punishments and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, I love Joe. I just think she could have done better.
Yeah. Joe's a badass.
Okay, episode 18?
Party over here. Kate invites everyone at school to her birthday party with like a singing invitation. It was a little weird. Lizzie and Miranda aren't allowed to go because both of their parents are like, there's no real chaperone, because the chaperone is Kate's older cousin who's like 19 or something. Maybe she's 18. So they're like, there's no real chaperone. You can't go. Gordo's parents are like, Gordo's an angel. He's not going to get into any trouble. So Gordo is allowed to go. They end up telling Joe, oh, we're just going to go to the mall, pick us up at 10. And Joe's like, okay, great. And so they sneak away to the party. It's chaos. It's all of Kate's cousins' friends. It's none of Kate's friends are there, so they don't recognize anyone because none of Kate's friends from middle school were allowed to go because there was no chaperone. Mm-hmm. And so we see a scene where Kate gets pushed into her birthday cake, and Lizzie decides to go and check in on Kate and see how she's doing. And she ends up inviting Kate to go back to the mall with them and to watch a movie. And Kate's like super appreciative and down to go until she realizes, I can't leave my house like this. Like, it's chaos. I cannot leave. So Lizzie ends up calling Joe and was like, you know what this party needs? A mom. And so Joe comes up and she does the classic, you don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. Except she says heck because it's Disney, guys. And everyone books it out of there. And Lizzie still gets grounded. But
yeah,
Joe saves the day. And I guess we learn don't have parties without chaperones. I don't know what we learn in this episode.
We humanize the bully is what we do. And we do it regularly with Kate. And I have mixed feelings about it because we don't do it consistently, but we do consistently see her treat people like trash.
Yeah.
So I really don't know that she needs to be humanized. As soon as Lizzie walked into that party, I was like, this is not nice enough to be a Kate Sanders party. Also, it does not look like your house. It looks like a motel on Route 69, like somewhere off a highway.
Also, special mention, because it just popped in my brain, Kate's cousin is played by Haley Duff.
Did it just pop in your brain, or did you see my note?
Oh, no, I didn't see your note. I'm looking at my notes, so I don't see your notes. So there's surprises to me.
That's so funny, because, as soon as she popped up, I forgot that Haley Duff shows up in Lizzie McGuire, and this is her first appearance as Amy, Kate's cousin, and then she gets thrown into other episodes randomly, and I'm like, okay, Momager Duff, like, I see you, but also, how old is this character supposed to be that she's hanging out with these middle schoolers?
Well, she's 18 or 19. I forget what number they say, but she's definitely 18 or 19. Like, she's a brand new adult.
It's kind of weird. Kind of weird. Don't feel strange about it.
Well, they're 13, so it is kind of weird.
I feel that it's hilarious that she's Kate's cousin and not Lizzie's, though.
Yes.
Also, the whole time that they were there, they kept mentioning that it was Kate's 14th or not mentioning the party, but I remembered that in Gordo's documentary, we learned that Kate was held back a grade, and I was waiting for that to come up, and they did not disappoint when Joe came in and she said, Happy 15th, Kate.
And Kate was like, my 14th, and Joe was like, really?
It made me so happy.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Do you have anything else to touch on regarding Lizzie?
No.
Okay. The only thing I do have to touch on is I think this is the first time we hear Lizzie's full name.
What is it?
Elizabeth Brooke McGuire. And Joe says something along the lines of, Elizabeth Brooke McGuire, you are not going to that party, and this is the last that I'm going to talk about this, or something like that.
Brooke is like not a middle name, but okay.
Well, it is Lizzie's middle name. Side plot is Matt and Sam are the new spokes family for Cardio Punch sports drink. They're filming a commercial that involves them scaling a rock wall. And we learn Sam's afraid of heights. And so Matt's trying to encourage him, and then Matt's like, Dad, are you afraid of heights? And Sam's like, yes. He's like frozen, like clinging on to the rock wall for dear life. And the director's just being a little asshole, and he's like, come on, we don't have all day here, blah, blah, blah. And so Matt rappels down, he yells at the director, and he like totally stands his ground. And then in the end, you see the whole family watching the commercial. Sam is fully edited out. He is turned into the sports drink. And the director is an animated dragon.
Yeah, and it's Matt's his little monologue to the director, but they edit out certain words, so it's like, that's my sports drink.
Yeah, instead of that's my dad.
Sam redeemed himself a little bit, but not completely, because I'm still eyeing him from the previous episode.
Sure.
But because he does this because he supports Matt and he wants to do a fun thing with him. Like, he knows that he's afraid of heights, and it's gonna be hard, but he does it anyway. The director is Zachary Quinto.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I clocked that immediately. No. I was like, so clearly this is where he got his big break.
Oh.
I mean, it's not. That's a joke. He got his big break on Heroes. But
yes.
That, no, that was really funny to me.
Well, also, this is more proof of when we talk about budget for this season.
Yeah. It's really, I find it so amusing anytime we see someone who isn't big yet, you know, like Aaron Carter and Frankie Muniz are big by the time they're on the show. But when we see people who are going to get big, then I'm like, ooh, this career took a turn.
Yeah. Episode 19. She said, he said, she said.
And if you're getting whiplash from plot lines that disconnect and have nothing to do with each other, don't worry, we did too when we watched it.
Yeah.
So, for this one, there's a giant food fight. We start the episode with Lizzie, Gordo, and Miranda hidden behind a table with this massive food fight going on in the cafeteria. So a little trope time, which I haven't done in 12 years.
Yep.
For that one. And finally, Lizzie's getting fed up, and she's like, who threw that? And then Phil Lewis, a.k.a. Mr. Mosby from The Sweet Life, a.k.a. whatever their principal's name is, because he is consistently the principal in Lizzie McGuire, and it throws me all the time.
Yeah, but he doesn't have, like, a notable name. Like, Principal Wexler and even Stevens, like, you know who Principal Wexler is. But I couldn't tell you what the principal's name is in Lizzie McGuire.
Me either, and I just rewatched this episode again today, and Kate says it, but I forgot it.
Well, I watched all 14 episodes this week. Couldn't tell you what it is.
So he goes, stop right there, Miss McGuire, and he pulls, for some reason, he decides Lizzie, Larry Tedgman, and Kate Sanders are the people responsible for the food fight, and he tells them, you're gonna have to clean up this cafeteria or write me a letter saying who is responsible for this food fight.
Yep.
And so we get these moments where they take turns telling their story of what happened, and it's hilarious because Kate's like, you know, because I'm popular and benevolent and everyone loves me, I float through the halls and they say hello to me and they're happy to see me because it's me. And then Larry's like, I cracked infinity and I was so excited to tell everyone, and he's like flying through in his Matrix coat, and I hate lunch because it breaks up the day of learning. And and you know, at various points in between their stories, they all want to blame each other. Like they're like, oh, Lizzie, we could team up and blame the other person. Yeah, like all we have to do is write this third odd one out's name on the paper and this will be done and we don't have to clean anything. And Lizzie's like, do you even know me? I'm going to do the right thing and it's not their fault. And it's not my fault either, so don't look at me. And she tells her story, and then she realizes that the one thing they all have in common is that they all, like, somehow bumped into or caused Gustav, the foreign exchange student, to trip. His food went flying, and that caused the food fight. But they don't want to blame him, so they don't write him down. They write down that they're all responsible for not stopping it because Kate's a leader and people would have listened to her, and Larry's smart and people would have listened to him. Well, she doesn't actually say that. Larry says that.
Yep.
And it's a Breakfast Club ripoff at the end, and they call themselves the Lunch Bunch. Yeah. I just really need to point out that their stories all had two things in common. One was Gustav, and the other one was that Miranda had a rash that day.
Yeah.
They all noticed it. Kate was like, in her story, she was like telling Miranda how to like get ointment for it or something.
Yeah.
And in Larry's story, she had the rash because of him, because of how handsome he is. But like, I just really enjoyed watching this, knowing how much Miranda would hate that they all remembered that she had a rash.
Well, and it was a really awful rash covering her entire forearm.
I know. It's like, no wonder they remembered it. But also, Miranda would just be mortified.
Definitely. Also, Larry... So, Kate's version of herself in her story makes sense because, of course, that's how Kate views herself.
Yeah, Larry, a little, like, Disney princess-y kind of.
Larry's version of himself, he acted like he was, like, cool and, like, had really, like, fun, flirty interactions with people. Yeah. Not like he was this big nerd. And in real life, Larry knows he's a big nerd and acts like he is a big nerd and is fine with it. So I thought it was interesting that in Larry's version of himself, he wasn't really himself at all.
I think Larry is one of those characters that kind of gets warped with time in their storyline. I think... Sorry.
Oh.
I think season 1 Larry knew he was a nerd and was okay with it. I think season 2 Larry is overly confident and flirts a lot with the girls, makes them uncomfortable, repeatedly makes comments to Lizzie and Miranda and Kate. And like, I think there's moments where he knows who he is, but he showboats. He acts overly confident, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's true. It still threw me off watching it. I was like, I feel like Larry's version of himself is not how Larry actually views Larry.
Or if it is, this kid needs some help.
Yeah, that too.
It's fine. It's whatever. It's a cute episode. Also, like, because no other students exist in this school, these are the kids that get pulled aside, which is what happens all the time.
Yep. And I think they want to put the 3 personalities together, so.
Oh my god, that annoyed me so much that they signed it. They were like, because sometimes from a Larry, from a Kate, from a Lizzie, instead of like from the popular girl or from the whatever, like the Breakfast Club does, they're like, they just use their names as like,
well, probably because they couldn't fully rip off the Breakfast Club. They just did it a little bit. They did like an ode to the Breakfast Club. Yes, they did.
I mean, I feel like you could because Victorious fully rips off the Breakfast Club.
Side note for all the Disney Plus users rewatching this with us, subtitles don't work on this episode. Don't fucking ask me why. I restarted Disney Plus multiple times, turned off my TV, turned it back on, undownloaded the app, re-downloaded it, turned subtitles off, turned subtitles back on. For some reason, they just don't work on this episode. So if you are someone who needs that accessibility feature, don't watch this episode because it's not user-friendly. No subtitles for you.
And if you work at Disney and are listening to our podcast because you're trying to tell if you can sue us, please get that fixed.
Yeah, out of love, please get it fixed. Also, if you would like some advice on how to make things more accessible, there are a lot of disabled individuals who would love to be on a panel if you paid them to test out your products and let you know how to make them more, more friendly for everyone to use. And subtitles are the bare minimum you could do, so please get that working. Thank you.
This relates to a little rant that you and I had earlier today about how, like, Disney really just gave us crumbs and we just ate it up with Disney Plus. Like, they had so much money And yet they have the shittiest streaming platform.
It has a lot of issues.
When I go from Disney Plus to Hulu, it's like I've graduated one step. And then I go to Netflix and it's like I've graduated 3 steps.
And the thing is, they're the newest platform. Like, they had all of these platforms to learn from. Like, what they needed to do was already laid out on a silver platter for them. All they had to do was take it and implement it.
My other thing is that they own Hulu. And I've never used ESPN Plus, but they also own ESPN Plus, which is another streaming. So you can get all 3 of them bundled together because Disney owns them all. But they own Hulu, and Hulu's already a better service and has been around almost as long as Netflix. And I don't know why they didn't just copy the platform of Hulu or implement some of those. Like, that Disney Plus hasn't been updated since it came out. Like, surely it's trash.
Yeah, it's not good. I think that's all the negatives we can talk about.
Sorry.
Our friend the mouse for now.
Yeah.
It will come back, though.
We love you. We're still eating it up and we're still watching.
Yes. And we will continue to use your platform. But if you would like us to make some improvements, we would be really, really supportive of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Matt and Lanny's side plot real quick. They go on a field trip. The bus leaves without them. They flip a coin. It tells them that they're not going home or to school. So then they run around downtown LA and just, like, have fun. And then they get busted. And Sam doesn't want to punish them because they bring him the winning ball of a game.
Yep, of a Dodgers game.
But Joe punishes them anyway. That's it.
Yep. Episode 20, Extreme Christmas. We got a Halloween episode last season. Gotta get a Christmas episode in this season. It's just a given.
Mm-hmm.
Lizzie is working... Oh, this is another big budget episode, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Lizzie's working on a Christmas float called Rock and Roll Christmas, and it's for, like, a float competition to win a free ski trip to Aspen. And Sam, Joe, and Matt and Gordo all show up to help her work on this float. But then they end up leaving to help Nobby Frosty Bump, who is the elf.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, like, a mall Santa Claus, essentially, and then there's a mall elf, and his name is Nobby Frosty Bump, and they lead us to believe that he is an actual elf.
Yes, before the floats and all of that, we see Lizzie donating a bunch of Matt's stuff without his knowing to the mall Santa.
Yes.
And Nobby is there.
Yes.
And the mall Santa is Steven Tyler. And I saw that and I was like, they really got Steven Tyler to be a mall Santa for what?
Well, it's coming around, so...
But then you forget about him because Nobby just shows up and takes over the show. Please continue.
Yes, Nobby takes over the show. Everyone leaves to go to Nobby's, like, retirement home, essentially, and help him get his pipes fixed. Because it's winter, they have no water, they need to get their pipes fixed. And so Lizzie's left all alone, and she's really upset that no one's helping her get her float done in time, and that she's going to lose this competition because it's just her, and she doesn't have enough hands or enough time to get it done by herself. She ends up falling asleep while working on the float from exhaustion, and in her dream, Nobby comes to her and basically tells her that she lost sight of Christmas. And so then she wakes up, and she decides that she shouldn't care about winning something for herself, and so then she joins in with everyone else to help them get the pipes fixed, and then Lizzie's float magically is perfect and beautiful. And what do we get? Steven Tyler singing on the float.
Mm-hmm, because her float theme was a rock and roll Christmas. I have to say, I forgot that Steven Tyler was in a Lizzie McGuire episode. B, even though he showed up in the beginning of the episode and her float was a rock and roll Christmas, I still did not expect him to show up singing on that float at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't realize it was him, but the whole time I'm like, this is someone famous. Like, who is the Santa Claus? Like, what is going on? And then at the end, I was like, oh, it's freaking Steven Tyler.
The sheer audacity of Disney to give us Steven Tyler as Santa Claus. And for what? Like, what is his connection to this? Because I know Aaron Carter, and I know Frankie Muniz, and I know Haley Duff, and But what is Steven Tyler's connection to Lizzie McGuire? Like, please let me know.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't get a separate Matt plotline because his plotline kind of, is intermingled. Everyone's plotline is intermingled in this one. There's a scene of them all at the like Christmas dinner table, all eating and passing food to one another as a family. And they have these little gnome candle holders that are gnomes. And then out of the gnomes' heads are like the long, I think they're called a hurricane candle, or hurricane candles. And they're all lit as like the centerpiece on their dining table. I need them. That's all I'm here to say. I would like those gnomes.
Okay.
That's really my only note, is when I saw those, I had to rewind it 3 times because I was like, oh, these are the best centerpieces / candle holders I've ever seen in my life.
I did not notice them. I did notice that her dream it wasn't just Nobby in a dream, it was a Christmas Carol style dream.
A Christmas Carol, yep.
I think her mom was like Christmas past or something.
Yeah.
And like Matt shows up. It's a whole thing because we have to. It's fine.
It's a full-on A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. I had another note in my head, and it floated away while I said that. Floated away like Steven Tyler in that parade.
Yep.
Wow. Oh, my other note was that the last episode where we talked a lot about Miranda's rash was the last time we see her for a while. She's not in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And she won't be for a while.
Miranda disappears.
She does. Lelaine didn't film the last, 6 episodes in production. And she said it was to promote her music. She, I think was going to go on a tour or something like that. Other people have said it had more to do with how she felt being marginalized as a person of color on the show, and how she felt like she had to be more performative as white. But she just disappears. But because they filmed it in a different order than they're showing it to us, the plot lines are all wonky, and yeah.
This is why we get them starting 8th grade multiple times. Lelaine disappears. She comes back. It's all types of weird, but we experienced this in season 1 as well. They don't film
in order
that they air. The production order is different from the airing order. So the show's not meant to have a consecutive plot line. It's not meant to make sense if you're rewatching in order, which I think has actually made part of rewatching in order fun. I would recommend rewatching in order because it's confusing.
Yeah. And it's also, I think it's extra wonky in season 2 because of Elaine's absence and because of the movie, because they wanted to set certain things up with Lizzie and Gordo and their graduation and stuff just before the movie came out.
Yeah.
So we also don't see Miranda, in episode 21. Lizzie's 11. But it is a banger of an episode.
Yep.
For this one, Lizzie is trying to get in as many photographs in the yearbook as possible, and I'm so glad that they threw this. She was rude to Gordo because, okay, so Gordo's like, who cares about the yearbook? People are gonna sign it and then it's gonna go into a box or a drawer with knickknacks for the rest of your life. And she's like, you tried to do this last year. And I'm just so glad that she called him on it, because I was thinking that too. Because we had a yearbook episode where he was trying to be in as many photos as possible.
Yep. I literally, as I was watching it, I wrote a note where I was like, Gordo was acting like Lizzie's being all crazy for wanting to be in all these photos when he did the same exact thing. And it was before she called him out. And then when she called him out, I was like, okay, thank you. It needed to be said.
It's the same satisfaction as Joe calling it Kate's 15th.
Yes.
I need some continuity here.
And unlike even Stevens, I do think Lizzie McGuire gives us more callbacks to previous episodes.
Yes, I agree. So Lizzie's trying to do this by joining a bunch of clubs. We see her first at Pep Club initiation, and she's got a mouse outfit on and stuff. Anyway, Kate somehow is in charge of the yearbook, and she's like, that's so cute. I'm just going to put in this one picture of you with a rash.
Yep.
And so it also happens to be Monte Carlo night, because this is the coolest middle school ever, and they have 12 million dances, and they're also really expensive. And so like, not related to the yearbook thing, it is Monte Carlo night.
Yes.
And Lizzie's gonna DJ, and Lizzie's like, I really need to figure out what I'm doing about Kate and this yearbook thing, because like I really, really, really want to be in the yearbook. And so she goes to Matt, and Matt's like, do you want long term or short term? And she gives him this really monster wedgie to get him to help. And I don't even know how to. It's kind of like with the Halloween one where they played a prank on Kate, and like I don't even know where to start. Everyone is in on this.
Yep, everyone. Joe's in on it. Sam's in on it. Matt's in on it. Melinda. Melina is in on it. I always forget her name.
Me too. We called her Melinda in season 1. Sorry.
But Melina's in Melina's in it. So everyone is in on Gordo, Miranda, like...
Not Miranda. She's not there.
Oh, yeah, Miranda's not there. I take it back. Gordo's in on it.
So we see... Let's see. We see she's devising a plan with Matt, but you don't know what it is. And then it's Monte Carlo night. Sam and Joe are chaperones. Sam is a greeter. He's terrible. Joe is a waitress. She hates it because she put herself through grad school dealing on a riverboat. And I just need to ask, what did she go to grad school for? Because we've never seen her have a job ever. But also, why is she so fucking iconic? Where was this riverboat? I have questions and I need these answers, and I think she needed a spinoff.
Also, probably we've never seen her work, because if she was smart, she made so much money freaking being a dealer that she saved all that tip money and invested it, and then maybe now she doesn't need work. Because I'm telling you, that's a 6-figure plus job. You are, especially if you're doing it in Vegas or what's the one in New Jersey, Atlantic City.
Yeah.
If you're in any of those big spots, that is a really freaking, if you're good at it, you can make bank. You are set.
Anyway. So, Sam and Joe are at this night. We don't really know who all is in on this. We just know Matt and Melina are there, and they're in like spy gear. And Melina has to like
they are in spy gear.
Matt and Melina specifically are in all black and like hats, and Melina has to like get Matt down with a rope through in this one classroom. And she's like, I still don't understand why we had to bring you in this way. And he was like, we didn't. I just thought this would be a fun opportunity to try it out. And then she just drops the rope and lets him fall. So we know they're in on it. And they like, Gordo gets angry at Lizzie for still caring about it, about the yearbook. And he throws his chips everywhere. And then Kate gets down on the floor to pick them up because she's like, I'll take his chips. When the fuck would Kate ever touch the floor is my question.
Yep.
But while she's doing this, Melina switches the bags, and then they
have identical bags. They knew the exact bag that Kate was gonna wear to Monte Carlo night and got an exact identical version of that bag to replace it with.
And then Kate is trying to take her final picture. She has 1 page left on the yearbook. She wants it to be her and Ethan in front of this background, which, by the way, they come in before Monte Carlo night, and Ethan's like, if it's Monte Carlo night, why are we here during the day? Anyway, so they're trying to take this picture. Larry Tudgman has to take it, and it's taking forever, and Lizzie keeps stalling and just like, she's saying random shit. She has this great moment where she fucking like hangs on to these drapes and goes across the room and switches something and goes back.
She does like full on somersaults, handstands. She's like monkeying across these curtains. It's iconic.
And there's one guy who's like another chaperone just watching her with his eyes huge, like, what the fuck? And then he looks away when she's done. And then she goes to Matt and she's like, did you see that? And he's like, see what? And then she accidentally, because she's using, somehow the walkie-talkie system is hooked up to the DJ system, so like she can either broadcast or she can walkie, and so she accidentally broadcasts to everyone. While she's doing this, Gordo is trying to download her pictures on Kate's file in another room. So then she shouts, Gordo, hurry up, Kate's coming. And then she's like, oh, it's the name of the song I was gonna play, but instead I'm gonna play Bop. You guys remember Bop? Which I thought was pretty
But we learn, so we think that this is accidental, that Lizzie broadcasts to everyone, Kate is coming, hurry up with the yearbook. But really, that's to grab Kate's attention.
So, just like we thought the Gordo fighting with Lizzie was spontaneous, but actually it was to get her purse so he could help download the pictures. And so Kate's going to the computer room to stop Gordo. Joe's coming too, because what the fuck is my child up to? And she's like, we're gonna do the right thing, Kate. Here's your disc, here's your pictures. And they go off, and then Matt and Melina and Sam come, and they're like, hey guys, how's it going? And it turns out they're all in on it, and Joe got to use her blackjack tricks to flip the discs and like get Lizzie's pictures onto them for, well, they had loaded already from Gordo. It's fucking fantastic, and we've gone on for so long because it's so convoluted, but it's so good.
It's so good. If you're gonna, like, after this, if you're feeling inspired, go watch episode 21. Chances are you'll remember watching it, because this is one I definitely remembered watching. But it's such a fun, chaotic episode with they're all in on the antics together. You get the dynamic of all the different personalities. It's just really good.
It has the chaos and the camp that we deserved in the Halloween episode last season. But for some reason, it's Monte Carlo night, and I don't know why. It's fine. My absolute favorite reoccurring theme in Lizzie McGuire is that Ethan cannot dance for the life of it. This boy is so challenged, and we see it later. It's like called out later, but in Monte Carlo night, he's seen just like pumping his chest and like missing the beat, and he's just having the best time.
It's all, the only way I could describe it is he's a very eccentric dancer that has no idea what way he's moving his body. He just moves it.
Yeah, he's just feeling it, and I respect that.
Me too.
I also really need to point out the fact that there is this one line where Joe is delivering a soda to, remember, these are middle schoolers, so like a 13, 14-year-old boy, and he says something like, thanks, baby cake, or baby, or something.
Dollface. Like, thanks, Dollface.
He uses two names. I know he uses Dollface, and he uses something else. Because then she's like, excuse me? And he's like, this is for you. Buy yourself something pretty, Dollface.
Yeah.
First of all, that is not his voice. That is a grown man's voice on a 13-year-old boy's body. It was creepy as hell. Second of all, that is Joey Zimmerman, aka Dylan, the brother from Halloween Town, which is how I know it's not his voice, because he has a nerdy, high-pitched voice, and it was deep as hell in that. And yes, I did double check on IMDb that I am correct. That was him.
That's funny. Episode 22, Dear Lizzie. Lizzie is writing an advice column for the newspaper, and she's really enjoying it. She's having fun with it. She feels like she's giving great advice. And then she gives advice to a girl who's being bullied to stand up to her bully, and this ends up with the girl having to hide in a trash can in the cafeteria. So she ends up like all covered in food, and Lizzie's like pretty upset. So anyways, this girl's like covered in food, talking to Lizzie how she's upset with, taking the advice that was given to her. And so Lizzie learns that her advice has consequences, and she starts to feel the pressure and is stressed. And she decides she's going to write one last column, and that's it. But she's struggling to develop the right advice. She keeps reading people's inquiries, and then she kind of daydreams of what her answer would be and how that scenario would plan out. And then she's like, no, I can't write that one. So then she ends up writing advice to confused guy who admits that he might like his best friend as more than a friend. And we learn that this is Gordo, and Gordo goes to tell Lizzie that it's him, but instead he doesn't, and says, Lizzie, you give good advice. And it's a very cute Lizzie and Gordo moment. It's reoccurring throughout this season where we have moments where Gordo goes to spill all of his feelings to Lizzie, and then either he gets cut off, or he chickens out, or he gets nervous, or whatever it is. We never actually hear him, or at least not yet, admit feelings for Lizzie, even though we know that he has them.
It's frustrating. I want to say trope time, Because I feel like an advice column thing is like a thing that was popular in the early 2000s that we saw. I saw represented in media more than I saw in real life, but maybe that's because I wasn't consuming the type of media where there would be advice columns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I feel like it's normally newspapers, so unless you're reading a newspaper.
Newspapers or
magazines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to point out, we've learned from her being an advice columnist that Kate has bad BO, that Larry feels lonely.
Yeah.
And that Ethan's tired of being only liked for his hair. And the things that she has her like worst case scenario fantasies about were because Larry feels lonely, she thinks that she's going to tell him to make his own friends, and then she fantasizes that he makes up a group of friends to take over the world and becomes evil, in which scenario Ethan is president and he's married to Kate, and it's all hilarious.
Yeah, and Lizzie is like the secretary.
Yeah. As his advice giver.
Yeah, oh maybe, yeah.
Ethan not wanting
I guess she's not his secretary, she's like his advisor.
Yeah. Ethan wanting to be liked for more than just his hair, cuts it all off, goes bald. That's her worst case scenario. And Kate, I think, wants to be more altruistic or something, or like not necessarily altruistic, but like find meaning. I don't know. She realizes she's kind of a jerk. And Lizzie has this fantasy that Kate joins the Peace Corps and ends up being like coerced into a giant pot that she thinks is a sauna by cannibals in Africa. And this fantasy gets kind of not kind of racist. It's
racist. Yes.
I watched this and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, there's problems.
Yeah. So, those are things we learn about them. Also, we see Claire. Claire's the one that writes that her friend has bad BO. And I feel bad for Claire because once, like, Farooka comes, Claire doesn't get any more screen time, really. And I feel like Claire was a bigger deal in season 1. And
yeah, she doesn't get a lot of screen time in season 2. We see her here and there, but not a lot.
No.
Where in season 1, she got essentially her she almost got a whole episode, you know?
Yeah, she was like the queen bee.
Yeah. No more Claire.
Also, did you find it weird that Lizzie wasn't anonymous?
That is literally my only note. My only note is, don't advice columns usually, some of them are anonymous, but most of them have a name. Most of them are like Dear something.
Yeah,
but
normally
it's an alias. Yeah. So I'm like, why is she not going under an alias?
It's so strange because A, Lizzie's not anonymous, and B, people are coming up to her in the hallway to ask her for advice, which means they're comfortable not being anonymous. And the whole way that advice columns work is the level of anonymity on both sides.
Yes.
And also, like, I can't imagine that these kids that go to school with Lizzie think that she could give them advice because she's like a mess all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part where it's like you have to, I don't know, you have to like take a moment where you're like, wait a minute, because there's not any scenario where she would go by Lizzie and that everyone at the school would know it was her giving advice, but she'd still get like 50 submissions. Like she was getting so many hits on the website.
Yeah. My other last note is that sometimes Lizzie McGuire does weird experimental editing type shit. Like sometimes they'll like go out on activities and they show like low res shots of it to emphasize that it was real or something. And with this one, when Gordo says you give great advice and she walks off with Farooka, it's slow-mos with some Hoobastank sounding song over it. It's not the don't want the world to see me, but song, but it sounds kind of like that as they're walking off. And I'm just like, what is that? Like the line "you give great advice" wasn't that nice to give us this whole freaking montage moment.
We don't need a whole like walk away moment.
Yeah.
Side plot. Are you okay if I move on to side plot?
Oh, go ahead.
It's not that great. There's a new class clown in school. His name's Adam Burton. He's giving Matt a run for his money. Matt's getting upset because he's like, I guess I just let him win. Like, there's not much more I can do. And then Matt and Melina end up plotting this whole scheme to end up dumping an entire bucket full of maple syrup all over Adam. And then they stick a bunch of Post-it notes all over him that say Matt wins. And it's actually pretty sad. It's really mean.
They do that because the kid had stolen some of Matt's pranks.
Yeah.
And one of the pranks the kid didn't even do, Adam didn't do, Matt did, but Adam got the blame because he was now becoming the new big class clown and they didn't like that. Melina's like, retire while you still have your dignity.
Yeah.
That's fine. All I have of note of that is that the only class clown I knew growing up, A, was not going to do all of that. They just made jokes, and B, they did it because they were insecure. So,
yep, I think that is most commonly why people act out, whether that's being a class clown or misbehaving or whatever it is.
Okay, but let's move on because the next one's amazing.
The next two are pretty good.
Okay, so again with the camp that we need in the holiday episodes. Episode 23 is called Clue-Less. And no, it's not a clueless episode the way we got a Breakfast Club one. So,
no.
Ethan comes up to Lizzie and he's like, what's bug gas? And and it turns out his house is being tented and he's really bummed because he was going to have a party. And then, so Lizzie offers up her house to have his party. And he's like, there's going to be a wedding and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, there won't be alcohol, right? And because no one else at this school exists, he invites Lizzie, Gordo, Miranda, except Miranda's still out, so she can't come. Larry, he makes the note that he saved my life once.
Yeah.
Kate's cousin Amy.
Yep.
And Farooka, who just scared him into inviting him. And turns out it's a murder mystery party, which is what I have always wanted to do with my life, and I've never been a part of one, and I am so jealous. But anyway, Lizzie's dad is dead. Lizzie's mom is like the distraught maid who's like, who killed him? Everyone has a terrible accent. And, Ethan's stepmom joins. She's even dumber than him somehow.
Yeah.
Matt joins as a detective.
Which then I feel like Gordo or someone makes a comment where they're like, oh, maybe it runs in the family. And I'm like, he's her stepmom. Like, there's no genes there. That's not how running in the family works.
I think there might have been multiple comments because I know Ethan makes the comment of, not Ethan, Gordo makes the comment, must be something in the water in that house.
Yes, yep.
Larry and Farooka have a bit of a romance. Like I said, Matt joins in because he wants to be a detective. He wants to solve it, even though they're like, Matt, go away. But he wants to have fun. He ends up just like showing everyone Lizzie's PJs. Kate struggles with being a nice person because her character is like a wholesome children's book thing. We really don't see Haley Duff, even though she's there.
Yeah.
And most notably, Gordo's a dick.
Yeah.
Like, Gordo and Lizzie are getting really competitive, and he's like, you can't have Ethan's attention and win. Like, you can't have everything you want, Lizzie McGuire. And she's like really annoyed, and rightly so. And I get pissed off watching this. He's a little crybaby who's sick of Ethan getting the attention. And so he like repeatedly undermines her attempts to find the clues. Eventually Kate pulls her aside and she's like, can't you see why he's doing this? He likes you. We can all see that he likes you. He's trying to get your attention. And Lizzie makes this great comment of, he doesn't have to be obnoxious to get noticed. Still, when it comes time to reveal who did it, she pulls everyone into the room. She's like, I know who did it. And then she lays out all the clues and then points her finger at the wrong person intentionally to stroke Gordo's ego. So then Gordo can tell everyone Joe did it. That's right. Joe did it.
Joe did it.
And
the maid did it.
great moment where she goes, he's dead! He's dead! He's dead! And Sam's like, honey, because she's talking about him. And then Gordo and Lizzie have a little heart-to-heart on the stoop where she's like, you impressed me. And he's like, maybe sometime we could. And then Sam interrupts them. Yeah. And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all she wrote. It's fun. Their characters are fun. The outfit's fun. The fact that we get a little wedding scene with Ethan and Lizzie is cute. It's just a really watchable episode. Like, the 20 minutes fly by.
Their accents are hilarious. They all choose very different, very offensive British accents.
Yep.
I just need to stress, don't ever make yourself dumb for a guy.
No.
Don't ever pretend to be dumb for a guy. There's a point where little Lizzie thinks, what if he's not being immature? What if he's doing this to impress me? That is being immature.
And it's jealousy. Like, really, that's what's fueling Gordo to be a dick. Is he's jealous.
Episodes like this, like, didn't make me want them to get together. It just made me feel annoyed with him. I was like, she deserves better.
Yeah, but I think it's also, like, did he handle his jealousy appropriately? No, but do I think it's important that, like, they're showing what it is to be jealous and how it can take over a human and make them behave in ways that are uncharacteristic to themselves? Yeah.
My thing, though, is that she is the one who compromised at the end, and he didn't learn from it.
Yeah, no, he does not learn from it.
Also, I just think it's really interesting that Ethan is the one having this party because it feels like a fever dream or like something Gordo would have done as an experiment. And
or
Ethan
even
really...
Kate. Like, it even seems like something that Kate would do.
You know what? I take this back because remember when Lizzie tries to change herself for Ethan, what do we learn? Is he likes a woman of mystery.
He does love a woman of mystery.
Yeah, no, it's a fun episode, and there's some really good lines. There's a moment where Ethan's like, he mentions, he's like, my dad died, because it's his father, the character, and his stepmom's like, then I can inherit everything. And he's like, in the game, not my real dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah. Do you have any other comments? Or you just really enjoyed it? It was just really watchable.
It was just really watchable. I don't have a ton of comments. I took barely any notes. I really just enjoyed watching it. It's like one that I would go and watch again. Like, it's just a really fun, classic Lizzie. You have, like, the Lizzie and Gordo thing. You also have all the characters together. And I think the episodes where they all scheme together, similar to the Monte Carlo night episode, they are just the most fun to watch. It's fun to see them all bounce off one another and not see them in, like, separate sections. Because normally that's how you get it. Will be, like, Matt and Lanny. And then maybe, like, Matt, Lanny, and Joe. And then Joe and Sam. And then Lizzie and Gordo. But you don't always get them all together. They're in their own little boxes. So to have them all interacting with one another just makes the episodes fly by.
Lanny could have solved the mystery.
Oh, yeah. Lanny would have figured it out before anyone else figured it out. He is the most, like, intuitive and aware person.
Yeah.
He's aware of all his surroundings at all times. And it's probably because he's neurodivergent.
Probably.
You know?
Okay.
Episode 24?
Yeah. Bye-bye Hillridge Junior High.
All right. In this episode, Lizzie's excited to be graduating and moving up on to high school. Don't get too excited yet because they're still in 8th grade, guys.
They've literally been in 8th grade for like 6 episodes and Miranda's been gone the whole time, so she hasn't even been in 8th grade. So, like, I don't know how we're going to high school now.
But we're going there. We never see them in high school. And we don't see graduation in this episode. But it's leading you to believe summer is starting, school is letting out, they're graduating.
Because the Lizzie McGuire movie is the summer after middle school.
Yes.
But this came out like 3 months before. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, we're only on episode 24. Season 2 has 34 episodes. So we still have 9 more episodes after this one. They're still in 8th grade. Lizzie gets stressed. So she's so excited about high school. And then they receive this warning letter from the seniors at the high school. And she starts to get stressed because she's like, oh my gosh, are we ready to move on to high school? Middle school is where it feels comfortable. This feels like a huge step. Are we going to be bullied? Etc., etc. And then this episode kind of turns into like a montage episode where they are signing each other's yearbooks, and you get flashbacks of all the previous episodes of Lizzie McGuire. And you get like friend moments, you get funny Kate moments, you get all of the times Gordo almost told Lizzie that he likes her but doesn't. And this all leads up to Gordo is struggling on what to write in Lizzie's yearbook. And he starts to write it, but then he gets pulled away and isn't finished yet because they're taking like a final 8th grade class photo. And so he tells Lizzie, like, don't look in there, I'm not finished yet. And she takes a look and she like gets caught in her feels, and they go to do a class photo. And right as the photographer snaps the shot, Lizzie leans in and gives Gordo a kiss on the cheek. It also does kind of feel like a cop-out of an episode in terms of like production and filming and stuff, because 50% of the episode is just them pulling scenes from past episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a lot of new content. It's just rewatching old content.
I also got confused because a lot of the stuff they reminisce on happened in 7th grade, and including stuff in the yearbook. Like, there's like a picture of you, and I don't think I made you watch that episode, but there's one where there's like Gordo in his suit at a dance or something, and it's a dance that they put on in 7th grade. And various, like, that shows up repeatedly, and I'm like, but this is a different year. Like, you're just being lazy.
Yeah.
Lizzie goes, there goes the only boy who ever really liked me in middle school, and it's about Larry Tudgman. And then Gordo brings up Ronnie, and this is where I think I pointed out in our other episode, they show the flashback to her talking to Gordo about Ronnie, where she's like, he found someone who's probably smarter than me and prettier than me and funnier than me. And they cut out a bit of the line from the actual episode.
Yep.
Where she goes, you forgot smarter, and he says, well, I was including myself. And then just like, I get that you were trying to condense for time, but that was a really fun part of that clip. Thanks.
Yeah. I do think in terms of, if you think at this point we've had over 50 episodes of Lizzie, 45 episodes, I don't know. We've had a lot of episodes of Lizzie.
Like 50.
I think it does make sense that it's time for them to throw back, use some old footage, reference things that happened in the past. So it is kind of a cute episode. Do we get a lot out of it? No. The side plot's really dumb. Matt and Melina are trying to find ways to keep cool because the AC in the house is broken and the public pool's not open for 2 more weeks. So they like are building this, or it's referenced that they're making this pool in the basement, but we never see it. We just hear Joe scolding them and being like, you can't do that. But we don't get a lot other than throwback moments in this episode.
I love Melina, but I also love Lanny, and I don't love how they kind of like, Lanny's in season 2, but they write him out a lot in favor of Melina.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, these episodes where Miranda isn't around and Lanny's not being written in, it's just very white.
Yep. It is.
Thought it was funny when they were listing boys that liked Lizzie, they didn't list Frankie Muniz.
Or Aaron Carter.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines from it is, you wouldn't knock it if you, or clock it or whatever, you wouldn't notice if you don't follow him on Instagram, which I only recently do. But Ethan at one point goes, you better watch me play water polo in high school. And the actor genuinely is a water polo player, and like to this day is very into it. So I feel like they wrote that in for him. Like, I just really loved it.
Fun. I like that they write, this is something that Disney consistently does, is they write in personality traits of the characters based on the actors that play the characters, which I think is really fun. And you wouldn't know unless you like do research on the actors themselves.
Yeah, for sure. The way that Hillary does her like gymnastics and stuff.
Yeah.
I will say, I know this episode came out early for the movie because that's the summer after middle school, before high school, and because Miranda's also not there. But it came out a few months prior, but child me thought that this came out after the movie. Because I remember seeing her kiss him on the cheek and be like, didn't they already kiss in the movie? So maybe I was just not watching them as they came out. I don't know.
Yeah, you were just watching reruns, which probably is true.
The other point I have to make is that what Gordo writes in her yearbook really isn't that.
No. It's just
sweet.
like, you're great, don't change, and I really mean it.
Yeah, they're all writing the same thing in their yearbooks of like, you're great, don't change. And he just writes, and I mean it. Yeah. And she's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, stop letting him do the bare minimum.
Sure. But see, I don't think Gordo does, though, because he really is there for Lizzie in times where she needs it, and he is a really good friend for her, to her.
Yeah.
But I just think in these episodes leading up to them building up their romance, they do kind of like dumb Gordo's character down a little bit in favor of showing him being smitten with Lizzie.
Are there children outside?
There are children. If you hear them, my apologies. They just came back from the pool and they're really stoked on it. You can't control them.
Okay, so talking about, I mean, are we good with that episode? Are we done?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, because I was going to say talking a little bit about how it felt very white for, well, I mean, the whole series tends to, but episode 25, Bunky's Miranda is back, baby!
Yes, she is!
They're back in school, still in 8th grade, supposedly, we think. We've never really seen Miranda start 8th grade, but that's fine. Well, no, she kind of, anyway, kind of did when Gordo went to high school. I don't know. Anyway, their art teacher returns. Was she also the newspaper columnist? Yeah, and she's like a little kooky. I don't have a better way to say that. I like am constantly looking for less ableist phrasing, but also like what they're doing to her is just ableist in general. Like she's just kind of like a bad stereotype of someone who's like, I don't even
She's
know.
definitely neurodivergent, but instead of like embracing the fact that she's neurodivergent and showing that it makes her unique and different and the ways that that can manifest and people interact with her, they kind of just paint her to be the outcast and everyone around her just finds her weird and avoids her. So they do a really horrible job at that.
As being like unstable in a way.
Yes.
For lack of a better word. Yeah. Anyway, but she has them do an art project on Unity, and where they all have to put their handprint on a wall, and the trio's really struggling with this because where do they put theirs? No one wants to let them in, and in the end they just decide that the 3 of them is perfect and they put their hands together. I didn't really get much from their plot, honestly.
I didn't get much from the plot, but I do have to say this is one of the episodes that I remember the most. Don't ask me why, but I do. Like, I definitely have seen this episode, like, more amount of times than a lot of the other episodes. I really remember this episode. Like, they must have put it on the rerun list at a higher amount than other episodes.
I think the handprints is a very visual thing that's maybe easier to remember.
Sure. I do think the side plot of this episode shares up almost the same amount of time as the art mural plot, which is a pipe burst in Matt's room. And so all of Matt's stuff gets moved into Lizzie's bedroom, and it causes them to fight, and Sam is pissed. Joe and Sam can't sleep because Lizzie and Matt are keeping them up. At one point, Sam aggressively shouts from the bedroom, you two better zip it and go to sleep or I'll make you sleep on the floor. And you can tell he's like serious. Like he
I
is
fucking
like,
felt that.
yeah.
I was like, my parents have yelled that at me before.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, this is a parenting mood that Sam is in.
Yeah.
And so eventually what Sam ends up doing is moving everything out of Lizzie's room. No bedroom, no, there's still a bedroom, but it's an empty bedroom. No beds, no furniture. He takes everything out, moves all their stuff to the basement, gives them a sleeping bag, and it's like, you're just going to sleep in this until you guys learn to get along.
Yeah, Lizzie's room is constantly changing. I've seen this before on like BuzzFeed articles or whatever, and it literally is, and like this room looks different to whenever we've ever seen it. Also, one of them has a Weird Al poster, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, Matt has a Weird Al poster. Also, my thing is like, you're telling me they have this big of a house. We see Matt and Lizzie's rooms, which we mentioned are constantly changing. But in this episode, both those rooms are huge.
Yeah.
And so you have this big of a house and you're telling me they don't have a guest bedroom? Like Matt just can't sleep in the guest bedroom? Like, I find that incredibly hard to believe.
Also, you just have a kid sleep on the couch.
Yeah.
My parents would never make my brother and I sleep in the same room. They would make
or set up an air mattress in the living room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is weird. Another, like, strange, weird plot is that, like, Jo decides that she wants to paint the front door to reflect the personalities of people inside. And so she's going through all the different colors. So you see Jo paint this front door, like, 14 times.
Until she gets back to...
White.
Yeah. Do you have any fun moments of that episode otherwise? I just have one.
Just the way that they portray the plumber is literally how it is to deal with any, like, AC technicians, plumbers, any people like that work on your house. That's exactly how it is to deal with them. Where it's like they give you a quote and they're like, well, it might cost this much, but I might need more money, but I might give you money at the end. And, it might take me a week, but also it might only take me 2 hours. Like, it just is a very accurate representation.
Sam gets hustled.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that. That had me cracking up watching him just constantly be like, maybe it'll take 2 months. Maybe I'll need $2,000. Maybe I'll need more.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Maybe you should just give me the $2,000 now and then I'll let you know.
Yeah. And then I think at the end he returns in an envelope to them $2.34 or something.
Yeah. My absolute favorite moment of this, and one of my favorites of the season probably, is that when they're doing the mural and they're finally all putting their hands up after selecting their location, we see Ethan decided to do a thumbs up in the mural, but he can't figure out how to get his thumb to reach. It's just his knuckles against the wall, and he's like trying so hard, and he's just such a himbo, and I love him so much.
And he asks, he's like, Miss Dew, I need your help. And she's like, oh yes, of course. And she's all excited to help him. And then when she finds out what his problem is, she just walks away. She's like, oh, I can't help you. It is pretty good.
I don't know why this is where I remembered it, but I took rolling notes in my apps, in my notes app, and for some reason after this episode is when I realized that in season 1, episode 14, we had an Orlando Brown cameo. I hope I mentioned that in season 1. I think I did. I don't know. Also that we called Melina Melinda in the season 1 recordings. Sorry.
Watch her name actually be Melinda. Is it for sure?
It's definitely Melina.
Okay.
I looked it up while I was making my notes here. Okay, and we're on our last one.
A Gordo story. Do you want me to go over this one?
Because we needed more Gordo, yeah.
I love Gordo. You gotta stop Gordo hating. Get out of here.
I just really missed Miranda.
I have a lot to say on... Well, not a lot, but I have a little bit to say on this plot.
Mm-hmm.
So, Parker is complimenting Gordo's basketball skills. Which are...
Parker, we've seen, by the way, like once in the Lizzie advice column or something.
Yeah. She's cute. Just your typical white girl, brunette. She's cute. Nothing
We
wrong
also
with her.
saw her when Lizzie, with the yearbook one, when she was going around asking people for clothes, and Parker was like, I heard you were asking for people's clothes. That's kind of weird,
Weird.
Lizzie.
Yeah, that is her.
Anyway.
And so Gordo's like, oh, maybe she's interested in me. Maybe I should ask her to the dance. And so he gets the courage to ask her to the dance. And Parker turns him down. She's just like, no, I don't think I want to go to the dance with you. And so then Lizzie interferes and asks Parker why. Like, why didn't you go to the dance with Gordo? And Parker goes, well, Gordo's too short. I don't want to go to the dance with someone who's shorter than me. Or I don't even know if he's shorter than her, but basically she's like, he's not tall enough.
Mm-hmm.
This gives Gordo some confidence issues, which we don't see a lot with Gordo because he is very like, I like sticking out. I like being different. Like, that's just who I am. I don't need to change for nobody. But you can tell he's really struggling with this because he can't change it. He can't do anything to fix it. He just is as tall as he is. Ethan and Parker end up going to the dance together, and Parker is hating her life because, running plotline, Ethan is a horrible dancer. He is moving his bodies in all types of weird way, and Parker does not know what to do with him. And
I just gave myself a headache.
It was great. It was a great interpretation of Ethan's dancing. Gordo, Lizzie, and Miranda end up all going to the dance together as a trio, which was the original plan prior to Gordo asking Parker. Parker ends up apologizing to Gordo and is like, you know what? I didn't pick the right person to go to the dance with. And Gordo comes in with a bird and he goes, well, I did. And Lizzie and Miranda let Gordo have one dance with Parker. Miranda ends up going and dancing with Ethan, and Miranda has no problem with Ethan's crazy dancing, so maybe she would have been a better date to Ethan because she's vibing with it. This episode makes me mad for personal reasons. I am married to a man who is shorter than me. All the serious relationships in my life have been with men that are shorter than me. Mm-hmm. And it is something that I have struggled with because I tend to be attracted to men that are my height or shorter than me. And I was always taught growing up that you are supposed to want to date someone who is taller than you. You should be attracted to people who are taller than you. Oh, they're tall. That's sexy. Or, oh, you're just supposed to seek for that. And it took me a lot of work to realize, like, no, why? Why does it matter? Who is teaching this? And why is the man supposed to be taller than the woman in the relationship? Why can't it just be if you're a good match, you're a good match, and like you didn't get to freaking choose your height? It is what it is. And so it really frustrated me that Parker was like, well, Gordo isn't tall enough. And I'm like, who's telling you that, Parker? Who taught you that? What led you to believe that? Get it out of your brain. The same people that
taught you. Yeah.
I know. It just made me so upset because it doesn't matter.
Did you clock how tall Gordo is? They mention it in the episode.
Okay, didn't they say that the average... Okay, they say something like the average height is 5'4" or 5'6", and he's like 3 or 4 inches shorter than the average height. So he's like 5'2"? Am I guessing this right?
He is 5'2", yeah. I'm like kicking myself internally for not leaving this as a trivia question, which is what I was gonna do. I don't know, like I get it on some level because as a kid in middle school, like I did care about height though.
Yeah, me too.
But we shouldn't. I love your relationship, and I always use it as an example because like you've always liked to tell me how some guys feel intimidated when you wear heels, and your husband Chris is just like, why should I care if you look hot? Like,
yeah, it doesn't matter.
But unlike when Gordo's jealous in another episode, this one Parker learns a lesson,
Yes. And I like that Gordo doesn't cave into Parker going up and apologizing, being like, oh, I came with the wrong person, blah, blah, blah. And Gordo's like, well, I came with the right people. Like, I made the right decision. Like, he stands by the fact that, she wasn't for him. She didn't see the value in him.
My issue with this episode is if you listening got whiplash at Gordo's romantic interests, so did I watching this. Him suddenly asking someone other than Lizzie to a dance after all of that fucking buildup, I was like, Parker's cute, but what?
Yeah.
Like, did he just revert? Or what happened? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in terms of continuity because the last few episodes, they've really been, like, throwing the, like, Lizzie and Gordo are gonna be a thing. We're gonna make them a thing in the movie. Just wait, we're gonna give you all the Lizzie and Gordo you want. And then they, like, fully retract.
They just kissed in another episode. Kissed on the cheek.
Yeah.
I also really, really want to say, because Lizzie and Miranda get mad at Parker, Lizzie was out of line to even ask her why she said no. And for whatever reason she said no, it doesn't... I just really want everyone out there, especially girls, to know that you can and should say no to anyone at any moment without being painted the villain.
Unless your reason is because they're too short.
I don't know. I feel like even then, like, that's probably just a reason you're using when you actually just aren't that interested.
Sure, I agree. You're allowed to say no, and you shouldn't be questioned for why you said no.
Because we see this later earlier when Lizzie pushes Ethan, and, like, just let people say no.
Yep. Do we want to touch on Matt's side plot?
Yeah, because this is another we don't know what to do, so we're going to recycle Lizzie's plots.
Yep.
A second episode on how white they are. He has to give a report at school about his ancestors, and he's disappointed because he's not related to anyone cool, and Lanny is related. He's a descendant of Crispus Attucks. I'm really sorry. Attucks? Crispus Attucks. Maybe. That's a little bit of a deep cut because I didn't know who that was, but they know who that is, and you probably know who that is, and I'm just dumb.
No, I had no idea who that was.
A free man who was the first killed in the Boston Massacre, and therefore the first person killed in the American Revolution, and he's also Black and Native American. Anyway, so Matt makes up this whole lying presentation about how he was related to George Washington and Davy Crockett and Elvis, and Lanny gets mad at Matt, and then he apologizes, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fact that we already had this with Lizzie. I was like, do we need this?
Yes, and it's the same reaction, right? Lizzie's like, and Matt's like, oh, I'm related to dairy farmers, how boring. And it's like, you're white. Yeah. I don't know what you want us to tell you.
And it's more of the parents being like, just be proud of who you are.
Yep.
And it's like, proud of what?
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is kind of a funky note to end on. I do almost feel like we should have ended on episode 24 because it made so much more sense to end with junior high, but like we're going through just with the episodes as they come in chunks.
Yep. My recommendation is if you're watching or if you're listening or watching to this podcast and it's inspired you to go and watch some of the episodes we've talked about, go watch episode 23, Clueless, and also go watch episode 21, Lizzie's 11, which is the Monte Carlo night. Those ones are really, really great.
Yes. Those are the ones I saw multiple times and thoroughly enjoyed.
Yep. We'll see you in the next episode, finishing off the rest of season 2, as well as talking a little bit more about the characters. So if you want to listen along with us, watch episodes 27 to 34 is what we'll be covering in the next episode.
And I think I will be quizzing you as well on some trivia and quotes.
Yeah, we'll see how I do. I don't know. I'm feeling like the pressure a little bit.
Good, because you fucking demolished me and even Stevens.
I know, and I feel like you don't play around.
No, but the problem is that I like talking so much that I like mention all the things I want to ask you about in our episodes.
Sure.
I want to say thank you to anyone, if you're listening, if you're watching. This is obviously a podcast available anywhere that you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. We're on Instagram. I've started a TikTok. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we'll have started posting on it. Same with we have a Twitter. Hopefully we'll have started posting on it. Yeah, we just really appreciate any support. You can send us a message on any of our platforms at any time. And Yeah. Do you want to shout out all the handles, because you're good at that and I'm
Yes.
not.
So if you want to watch on YouTube, look at 90s Babies Nostalgia, spell out the word 90s, as well as we are 90s Babies Nostalgia on Instagram. On Twitter, we are 90s_babies. And on TikTok, we are 90s Babies Nostalgia.
90s Babies Nostalgia, but I think I use the numerical 90s.
Use the numerical 90s if you're searching for us on TikTok. We'll also have all of this listed in the description, but we would really appreciate this to be interactive. So if you have any comments on any of the episodes we watched or something you want to share for anything regarding Lizzie, just feel free to reach out to us.
And if you have any friends or family who you think would be interested in this podcast, who grew up with similar interests as us, like just clearly watching too much Disney Channel and enjoying it thoroughly, feel free to share, please.
Yes. And rate and review.
Oh, yes. Anywhere you get your podcast, please rate us. Because that really helps us. Especially on Apple Podcasts, lets them know that people are listening, that people like it, so they can promote it to others.
Yep. And other than that, we will see you in the next episode for the rest of Lizzie McGuire.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.